Everyone seems to be emphasizing the need to go green these days, but what about our diets? Some experts are saying plant-based diets don't just help our bodies, they help the earth too. So what if we shifted from power plants to plant power? Well, to answer this question and others, here in studio we have the world-renowned Dr. Milton Mills. You may have seen him in the documentary, What the Health? But it is our pleasure to have him here in studio, and this show just wouldn't be the same without this wonderful guest. Dr. Mills, thanks for coming in and joining us today. But before we discuss what's wrong with our bodies, I want to hear about you. How are you today? And what do you find is amazing about our bodies?
Oh, well, first of all, thank you for having me and inviting me. It's great to be here. And personally, I'm doing great. I actually I had not very many people know this, back surgery on the 21st of January. And I had a problem with some spinal stenosis from an injury I had sustained when I was working in a warehouse and had gotten progressively worse. I'm happy to say that my recovery from that surgery was much faster and easier than I had anticipated. But even more importantly, the surgery was done by a orthopedic doctor and a neurosurgeon, and they were both impressed by the speed of my recovery, and that I attribute without question to my having been plant-based. So I'm doing great. Now, with respect to the greenness of plant-based diets, there is no question that being plant-based makes us much greener. But the fact that we are herbivores means that when we stick to a plant-based diet, we're actually fulfilling our natural niche in the environment. And as a result, we use less resources and contribute a much smaller amount to the amount of climate affecting gases that are being put into the environment. You also asked me about what I think is amazing about the human body. There are so many things we could literally spend the next year talking about them, but to just start, the scientists back then thought that cells were just a membrane that enclosed some fluid. We now know that every cell in our body is like a little city with a central control being directed by the nucleus and the chromosomes that are in the nucleus. There are factories located in different parts of the cell that produced compounds that are then sent directly to the place that they need to interact. So within us, the ability to keep these processes going in ways that support our cognition so that we can go about doing all the things that we do. Again, the human body is truly phenomenally amazing.
That is so amazing. I had no idea how much went on in our cells. When we look at the roots of where plant-based eating started, can you give us an overview of our history with it and where it really came from?
Sure. That's a wonderful question because a lot of people have the mistaken impression that the knowledge about plant-based eating and its impact on our health and even the environment are fairly new concepts, and that is not at all true. One of the ancient Greek philosophers and mathematicians, Pythagoras, is thought to have been the father of vegetarian veganism in Western society because he advocated a meat-free diet. If you go back to the Bible, we know in the very book of Genesis, we are told that when God created the earth and put humans on it, he told them to be strict vegans. Abstaining from eating other animals was healthier for us, both physically, mentally, and spiritually. There has always been a knowledge of being plant-based as being healthier. And within the United States itself, the plant-based movement or vegan movement really began to grow and come into its own back in the 1800s, the 19th century. And one of the principal proponents of abstaining from animal foods in our diet was the Seventh-day Adventist Church, which came into existence around the mid-1800s and again advocated at its inception and continues to advocate that humans adopt a plant-based diet because that is the original diet God designed us to eat. And I will say that all of the accumulated science that we've had over the last 150 years underscore and support that contention.
So, we had the pleasure of chatting yesterday a bit about your own background with plant based eating. Can you share with our audience today a little bit about your story and how you came to include this as a big part of your treatment and practice?
In my early teens, I began a quest to try and understand my relationship to God and whether God was real, and if he was real, what his desire and plan for my life was. And in the course of trying to answer those questions, I began reading the Word of God, the Bible, and talking to God through prayer. And God talked back to me. He answered those prayers. And I literally did not think I could live without eating meat. I thought I had to have it. And one night I was talking to God about it because I was very distressed. And I'll be honest, I was talking to him in an accusatorial manner, meaning I was saying, God, why won't you help me get past this? Why haven't I gotten the assistance I need to get over this problem? And God, in his infinite mercy, wisdom, and grace, instead of telling me, dude, it's your own fault. No, he said to me the following. He said, if you want a closer relationship with me, you need a clear mind. And for that, you need a better diet. You have to stop eating meat. I ultimately was led to look for a career where I could educate people about the importance of being plant-based so that they didn't have to live in fear their bodies were going to turn cancerous or they were going to die from a heart attack, because I had had, again, experiences in my life and in the lives of some of my closest friends. And that's what led me to decide to go to medical school so that I would have the vast understanding of human health and physiology, and also the credentials to help people understand, I'm telling you as a physician, this is healthier for you, it is better for you, and this is the way you should live.
That's amazing. I've just got to ask a follow up to that. You're 16 years old and making this change. What was your family's response to it?
Yeah. My so my parents had divorced by this point, and my brothers and I were living with my father. And I came home and I told my dad. I said, "Dad, I've decided I'm not eating meat." And he said, "Well, I'm not fixing anything differently. So if you're gonna eat, if you're gonna be vegetarian, you're on your own." I believe that my dad thought this was like some teenage phase, and that if he shocked me out of it, I would come to my senses. And I said, "I understand." And we went forward. He didn't fix anything differently, but I learned to, eat what was plant based, supplement things as I needed to, but I never looked back, and it never dissuaded me from the choice that God had led me to make.
That's amazing. And I know I'm going to ask you a little later about some of those supplements and stuff that he did with that. When we first started, we were talking about how you were in the documentary What the Health. What are some statistics that you can share with us that have really shown the rise of plant based eating in the last few years?
So, research has shown that over the last 10 years, particularly, plant-based diets have become incredibly popular. And more people are adopting plant-based diets because they recognize the health benefits and also the impact on the environment. And with respect to different groups within the United States, the group that is believed to be the fastest growing with respect to adopting a plant-based diet are African Americans. And the Adventist 2 Health Study, which is a longitudinal study of Seventh-day Adventists that look at those who eat meat versus those who are plant-based, has shown that the healthiest group of African Americans in the United States are plant-based Seventh-day Adventists.
Wow.
And some researchers even argue that they are the healthiest group overall. of the different ethnic groups within the United States. So the popularity is just taken off.
Thank you for answering these questions. It's a perfect springboard into answering some questions of locals here that have submitted that want to know your feedback on issues that they're facing.
Oh, that sounds fantastic. Let's go.
Hi, doctor. I have a question about my 94-year-old mother. She loves to eat cheese and milk and ice cream and chocolate. I do try to give her meat, and she will eat some. But do you think I need to give her a bit more meat, please?
Okay, so very interesting question. So let's take the last question first. No, you should not be giving your mother more meat. And in fact, the less meat you give her, the better it is for her. And it will just increase her risk of developing a number of chronic health problems, such as dietary problems, bowel problems, raises the risk for colon cancer, breast cancer, and other problems. Secondly, in terms of your mother's love of cheese, I would encourage her to eat less of it because, again, cheese made from dairy products, it's full of hormones. It's full of uh, proteins that really don't enhance our health, and it's been shown to raise the risk for breast cancer. So look for plant-based sources of cheese. There are a number of them out on the market now that are tasty and much better for us than cow proteins. And then lastly, my mother, like your mother, loved ice cream. And again, I didn't want her eating dairy-based ice cream for the many of the issues that I just mentioned, the hormone content, the animal protein content, and the animal fat content. So I moved her over to plant-based ice creams. So those are the things that I would do for your mom, and definitely do not encourage her to eat more meat. She doesn't need it at all, and it's healthier for her if she eliminates it from her diet.
Okay, so there's a major issue that you've taken on in the past that I'll dairy to get into, forgive the pun. What's the scoop on dairy, and why do you recommend not just vegetarianism, but entirely being whole food plant-based?
Sure. So we have become so accustomed in Western countries and the United States to the consumption of dairy-based products that it has acquired a normalcy that it does not deserve. What we consider dairy are products that are made from cow's milk. Milks are species specific, and they're designed specifically for the infants of a particular species. So the difference between cow's milk and human milk, you can take cow's milk and churn butter from it, make ice cream from it. You can't do that with human milk. Cow's milk is largely saturated fat. Cow's milk also has over 2 times as much protein in it than human milk, and that's because baby calves grow at a much faster rate than baby humans. Furthermore, the type of protein in cow's milk is much more growth promoting than you find in human milk. The bottom line is that dairy products are made for cows, not for humans. And I tell people you shouldn't be drinking uh, cow's milk for the same reason that if you needed a blood transfusion, you would not allow me to transfuse cow's blood into you because you know it's not made for your body.
That is so interesting. Now, you had a presentation, I believe it was called Meat Eating and Mind Game. Yes. And in it, you talked about how we disguise meat in a way to make it seem palatable to us.
When you look at pathogen discuss across cultures, you find that there are certain qualities that make that in every culture are found to elicit a disgust response in humans. What are those qualities? They're things that are moist, wet, slimy, bloody, amorphous in shape, things that are rotting, covered with flies or fur, and so on. And when you step back and think about it, that's describing raw animal flesh. And the fact is that if you took just a glob of raw, bloody animal tissue and plopped it down in front of your average person, they would not touch it. They would be offended, disgusted by it, and not want to eat it. Now, contrast that with edible plant parts. Edible plant parts tend to be hand-sized, smooth-edged, rounded objects that are firm in texture, um, frequently colorful, and that clearly taste like plants. So what do we do to animal tissue to make it acceptable? We skin it, pluck it, remove all of the fur, scale, hair, and feathers. Then we shape it into these rounded, hand-sized, smooth objects. We drain it of most of its blood. We cook it to give it a firm texture. And most importantly, we cover it with plant products. We call them seasonings, but we're really trying to make them taste like plants because that is what our brain wants. And so we circumvent that natural disgust response by making animal tissue mimic, look like, taste like, smell like plant products.
That's incredible. Now, you and I were chatting yesterday, and I've been vegan my whole life, pretty much. And something that came up that I was really surprised by, because I have never heard this before, was how biologically we are created in a certain way for a certain diet.
Absolutely.
Can you explain that more to us?
Sure. And so that process literally just starts with the way our jaw structure operates, the way our faces are made, the fact that we have well-developed facial musculature, small opening into our mouth, and all of that is designed to help us chew and process plant foods. Animals that eat meat don't chew. They simply slice off a hunk of meat and swallow it. Furthermore, they have less well-developed facial muscles so that they can, open their mouths really wide, grab onto an animal, dismember it, and swallow the chunks of flesh. They don't have enzymes in their saliva. Plant-eating mammals have enzymes that start the process of breaking down carbohydrates found in plants as we chew our food. When plant-eating mammals close their jaw operates in a horizontal fashion, meaning the molar-like flat cheek teeth, flattened molars in the cheek come down on top of one another, and they slide across one another in a grinding motion. They can also slide backwards and forwards. And this allows the rotary actions that are necessary to chew plant foods. Why do plant foods have to be chewed? Because unlike animal tissue, all plant tissues, the cells have a cell wall made up of cellulose. So in order for the animal to actually extract the nutrients contained in the plant tissues, they've got to disrupt that cell wall through chewing to allow their enzymes access to the nutrients in the cellular interior and to obtain nutrition from it. So herbivores chew, carnivores just slice and swallow. And that's why humans easily develop food poisoning when we eat food that has started to rot, because we aren't designed to do that. So we have the classic dimensions of the plant-eating mammal. And then we have a very long colon or large intestine for an animal our size. Why? Because a meal actually spends more time in our colon than it does anywhere else in the digestive tract. And the reason it's there is so that the bacteria or microbiome that's in the colon has time to break down the plant fiber and create all of these amazing physiologic compounds that enhance our immunity, make us more cancer resistant, help us control our weight, and help ward off depression. You can't really have optimal health without a well-balanced and functioning microbiome, and you only get that from eating plant-based diets.
That's all so fascinating to me. Something that so many Canadians and others are really questioning is, what about protein and nutrients given this?
Right. So I want to start off by saying most Westerners have been completely gaslit with respect to the importance of protein, number one, and the sources of proteins. First of all, people need to understand all protein is initially made by plants. Okay, you've got to understand that if all the plants on this planet died, all of the animals would die. So all protein is initially made by plants. Then animals come along and eat that plant protein and reprocess it into animal tissue. So bottom line is you can get your protein from the same places the cow gets her protein. Cows don't eat meat, yet they're giant animals. Where does it come from? From plants. And we can get protein directly from plants. It's complete protein, and it is the most healthful form of protein that we can ingest.
So, from your critical care experience, what is the link between plant based eating and chronic diseases that we're facing in our society, like heart disease, diabetes, cancer, all this?
Sure. So this was back in the early to mid 1800s and then on into the 20th century. And when you look at what was the most likely cause of death for Westerners at that time, it was things like infectious diseases, communicable diseases, and things like trauma. But what is killing the majority of Westerners nowadays are not the infectious communicable diseases or even trauma. It is diseases of overnutrition, people eating the wrong foods for most of their life that cause disruptions and dysregulation in their physiology that result in disease. So, for instance, the majority of heart disease is certainly coronary artery disease. It's caused by the consumption of an animal food-based diet. I myself have shown several times with patients that I have that putting them on a strict plant-based diet puts type 2 diabetes into remission. Patients are able to come off all of the medications that they're put on, and their cholesterol levels come down to normal. Their blood pressure comes down to normal. They lose weight, and they return to a state of health. So there is no question that the majority of chronic disease that we see now in Western countries like the United States, Canada, countries in Europe is directly related to this animal food-based diet people are encouraged to consume in Western countries.
Mental health is often overlooked. With a plant based diet, does it have impact on our mental health with our mood and, how we feel?
Absolutely. So, and this actually it starts in utero because some of the more recent research that has looked at fetal development shows that in women who are pregnant who have a low fiber diet, they tend to have children who have more difficulty multitasking. And so the more fiber a woman eats while she's pregnant, the more advanced the neural development in her baby once it's born. But beyond that, we also know that plant-based diets are associated with lower rates of depression, anxiety, and other mental conditions. And the corollary to that is that when we look at societies that formerly had consumed a largely plant-based diet, such as rural China, and we watch what happens in those societies as they industrialize and westernize and adopt a Western-style diet, not only do we see the expected increases in heart disease, diabetes, cancer, and so forth, but we also see a concomitant increase in anxiety, depression, violence, and social disturbances caused by mental instability. So there is absolutely no question that plant-based diets help stabilize our mood and mental health and help improve mental health and lower the risk for depression and anxiety.
That's incredible. I had no idea how much of an impact it played to have that in a mother's womb
Absolutely.
for what happens with your baby's development later. So, thinking of that, what kind of supplements and nutrition do people need to be aware of if they were to adopt a plant-based diet? I've heard about B12 and some of these things. Tell us a little bit about that.
So, yeah, B12 is only made by bacteria. And the reason we have to supplement it in modern settings is because we've eliminated the natural sources of B12 from our environment. We excessively wash our vegetables to remove any trace of soil or dirt. So the fact is that we've simply eliminated natural sources of B12 that would be available to us because we live in these Western concrete, steel, plastic environments, we simply have to supplement the B12. But that has nothing to do with the deficiency in the diet. It's an artifact of how we choose to live. Now, beyond that, um, people sometimes believe that when they adopt a plant-based diet, again, that they have to start supplementing protein. No, you don't. Studies have shown that even vegans and vegetarians get up to 70% more protein on a daily basis than they can utilize. All the protein that you eat in a 24-hour period that your body doesn't use as protein, it gets converted into carbohydrate. In addition to that, excess protein can accelerate kidney disease. It can potentially cause other physiologic problems. So you don't want to eat more protein than is normal or natural, and certainly not more than is necessary.
That's fascinating. I think that should set a lot of our hearts and audience at ease
Absolutely.
with that info. Let's jump to some callers. Here's some more questions.
So this is Terrence K. I'm convinced on going vegetarian, but I want to do it slowly. Should I cut beef or dairy first?
So my recommendation is that if you're going to make the change, it's best to make the change completely. Because what happens when you change your diet, and particularly when you convert to a plant-based diet, is your body starts to remake itself. And it can do that most effectively and most efficiently if you stop putting in toxic sources of animal protein and so forth. For people who've been raised on an animal food diet, you certainly develop a predilection for these foods, and frequently it's an actual addiction. And so rather than trying to make gradual changes, eliminate the toxin and the poison and heal, and you'll do much better and feel much better.
This is from Connie J. Hey doc, I'm just wondering if going plant-based could potentially help me with my acne.
There is absolutely no question, Connie, that going plant-based will help your body heal from acne, which is at its base an inflammatory process that is actually fueled by the animal fat and animal hormones that are found in dairy and meat products. And you will find, as I did when I went plant-based, my acne disappeared overnight. And there's actually lots of research in teenagers that show when they convert to a plant-based diet, their acne essentially goes into remission and resolves, and they find that their complexion is much better. They don't have all of the breakouts and inflammatory problems they were having before. So there is no question that going fully plant-based will help and probably completely eliminate your acne problem.
Dr. Mills, thank you so much. I honestly feel like my mind has been blown with all of this information today. Thank you for coming in and explaining it in such a profound and practical and informative manner.
Well, again, thank you for having me. I really enjoy the opportunity to share this information with people so that they realize that our health is in our hands, and that by adopting the diet that our bodies were designed to consume, we allow our bodies to heal. We experience the full benefits of being plant-based and what true and optimal health feels like.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
If you've enjoyed this week's episode of Ask the Doctor, please join us for the next episode as the conversations are still going on. In fact, you can also be a part of them. So please submit your questions to askthedoctor@3abn.ca and leave a message with your question. Thanks for watching.